A shaft of dawn cuts through the soot-darkened windows of the mining shaft, spilling pale light onto jagged walls slick with sweat and danger. The air is thick and heavy, carrying the iron tang of ore and the damp, choking scent of wet stone. Each inhalation tastes of dust and grit, clinging to throats raw from hours in the bowels of the earth. The beams above groan and tremble, warning of their fragile loyalty, while shadows twist along the walls, animated by flickering lanterns and the panic of men pressed to their limits. Miners move like specters in the half-light, faces streaked with grime, eyes hollow with the knowledge of risk that each day demands. Their hands, raw and blistered, grip picks that strike the rock with a rhythm older than memory itself, a rhythm that echoes the heartbeat of the earth. Every creak, every whisper of falling stone, is a harbinger of death, yet they press on. The youngest among them, children no older than 10, scurry across the slick floors with baskets of coal, small bodies shaking under impossible weight. Their fingers, already blistered, clutch at the wooden handles as though holding life itself. Their eyes, wide and unblinking, know too well that the earth forgives nothing, that the tunnels demand obedience, breath by breath, step by step. A dropped lantern rolls across the floor, sparking against the stone. Shadows leap and twist, ghostly dancers across the jagged rock faces. A chorus of anxious murmurs rises, mingling with the metallic clank of tools and the whispered prayers of men who have long ceased to pray to gods they cannot see. The darkness is alive here. It hums with the weight of the earth, a slow, grinding heartbeat beneath ribs and flesh. Dust settles on sweating brows, on cracked lips, on the blistered hands of children who know, already, that life is measured not in years but in moments, measured in breaths stolen from the dark. Every tunnel is a world unto itself, a claustrophobic kingdom where light fights to exist and shadows claim dominion. The smell of damp leather from worn boots mingles with sweat, iron, and the acrid tang of fear. Here, the simplest misstep can unravel a life. A trembling timber, a sudden collapse, a whispering crack overhead. Each is a sentence in a silent ledger of mortality. And yet they persist. Their persistence is a quiet rebellion, a stubborn refusal to be erased. One miner swings his pick with deliberate force, sending sparks flickering into the gloom. The noise reverberates, a sharp, temporary victory against the oppressive silence. In the dim glow, sweat drips down his face, streaking the grime into rivulets, mixing with the dust that clings to every pore. His arms tremble with exertion, yet he does not pause. Beside him, a boy dumps coal into a crate, the weight too much for his small frame, but he bends and lifts, teeth gritted, eyes fixed forward. Their survival is a fragile choreography, one false step away from catastrophe. Outside the shaft, the world breathes in contrast. The first crows wheel in the cold morning air, their cries slicing through the quiet as if they alone understand the price of life below. Frost clings to the edges of wooden scaffolds, glinting in the nascent sun. The cold bites at skin newly free from the suffocating dark, a reminder that the surface is alien yet merciful, a fleeting reprieve before descent into shadows once more. Emerging miners blink against the light, faces coated in soot and sweat, hands trembling not only from labor but from the sudden shock of survival. For a brief moment, the world outside is almost unbearable in its brightness. The wind carries scents of pine, of distant smoke, of life unburdened by collapse and dust. The men inhale deeply, tasting air that does not choke, that does not sting with iron and despair. And yet, even in this fragile sanctuary, the memory of the tunnels lingers. It clings to skin like a second shadow, whispers in the quiet spaces between breaths. To leave the shaft is to step into a world that seems impossibly safe, yet they know it is only a pause, a fragile interlude. The miner's eyes, adjusting to sunlight, betray the story of hours spent beneath the earth. A boy raises his hand to shield his eyes, blinking rapidly, as if to erase the visions of the darkness behind him. His small mouth trembles, tasting iron and sweat, remembering the echoes of rock, the collapse of timbers, the whispered prayers that never reached the sky. Behind him, men stand in silence, shoulders slumped, chests rising and falling with relief and exhaustion. The shadows of the shaft linger, stretching across their forms, an invisible tether that reminds them of the life they have survived and the death they have eluded. The earth below remains patient, silent, unyielding. It does not forgive. Its tunnels wait, coiled like serpents, ready to reclaim any who dare underestimate its depths. Every pick struck, every footstep taken, is a negotiation with a force indifferent to suffering. And yet, in the defiance of miners, in the persistence of small hands clutching baskets too heavy, there is a poetry of survival, a testament to human stubbornness, to the unyielding will to endure. When finally the last miner emerges, shoulders aching, lungs burning, a thin layer of frost dusting his clothes, he pauses. He looks back toward the darkened mouth of the shaft, a world that feels simultaneously alien and intimate. The sun glints on frost and iron, painting the world in cruel beauty. He inhales deeply, tasting air that is clean, merciful, and almost unbearable in its freedom. Yet even here, he cannot shake the presence of the tunnels behind him, cannot deny the weight of what was endured, the shadows that still linger on his soul. The day moves forward, and life above ground continues, indifferent to the lives carved into the rock beneath it. A crow's cry echoes once more, high and solitary, a reminder of omens and the fragility of existence. And somewhere deep in the earth, the tunnels wait, patient and eternal, their darkness a mirror to the human condition. Unyielding, dangerous, and yet alive with the pulse of those brave enough to enter. As light stretches across frost-laden fields and smoke rises from distant hearths, the miner steps forward, each footfall hesitant yet resolute. He carries the weight of the darkness within him, the memory of dust and sweat, of tiny hands trembling yet persevering. The world seems vast and unforgiving, yet in that very enormity, there is a momentary mercy, a reprieve granted to those who have survived the living grave beneath the earth. The tunnels wait, as they always have, as they always will, and the miner knows that soon he must return, to the shadows, to the danger, to the rhythm of survival measured in breaths and the careful placement of one foot before the other. The marketplace is alive with a riot of smells, a sensory storm that clings to skin and clothing. Roasting meats, the sour tang of spilled ale, wet hay pressed into the soles of boots, and the acrid stench of human labor, sweat and toil mingling with the dust of the streets. The sun, a muted sphere behind a curtain of smoke and mist, casts long, trembling shadows across the cobblestones, which glisten with the residue of a morning rain. Merchants shout, their voices straining against the clamor of hooves and the creak of wooden carts, but all sound falters under the weight of the singular presence moving among them. The executioner walks like a shadow made flesh. Hooded, silent, each step measured, he bears the dual burden of fear and fascination that follows him like a second skin. Leather straps creak under the weight of axes and cords, the sound sharp and intimate against the backdrop of murmuring crowds. His gloved hands, thick with scars that speak of centuries of duty, glide over the cold steel of his instruments, polishing them until they gleam like moonlight on water. The axes, the ropes, the hooks, every implement holds a promise, a finality. a quiet terror that ripples through the air before a word is even spoken. Children clutch at the skirts of mothers, wide-eyed, drawn to the darkness as if it were a secret too dangerous to resist. Old men lean on canes, their breath steaming in the chill, whispering of justice and sin and fate, though their words are swallowed by the chorus of anticipation. Even the birds, delicate wings cutting the gray sky, sense it. They rise in sudden flocks, raucous, chaotic, fleeing the invisible premonition of blood. Then the condemned are brought forth, eyes wide, brimming with the raw clarity that comes only when life's fragile thread is drawn taut. Some stumble, trembling, guided by guards whose expressions are masks of routine, their hearts perhaps hardened by repetition, or perhaps not hardened enough. Each face tells a story, a lifetime compressed into the moments before finality. A mother's hope extinguished, a lover's farewell, a child who will never understand why the world feels suddenly empty. There is a rhythm here, ancient and inexorable. Each swing of the axe, each whisper of rope against necks, resonates with a ritual precision born of law and superstition alike. The executioner's movements are choreographed by centuries of practice, an unspoken covenant between power and mortality. Every pause, every hesitation, every deliberate breath he takes is a note in a dark symphony where life is fragile, fleeting, and measured against the cold impartiality of justice. The crowd leans forward, drawn as much by dread as by morbid curiosity. A murmur rises, threads of conversation snaking through the open air. Prayers muttered under breath, curses spat in shadow, all laden exclamations of fear and fascination. They are voyeurs of inevitability, witnessing the terrible intimacy of death as if it were a private confession offered freely before them. Here, power is distilled to its most elemental form. Control over life itself, wielded with precision, and watched with reverence and horror alike. Above it all, the church bells toll. Their hollow tones cut through the marketplace, ringing off the damp stone walls and echoing across slick cobblestones. The sound carries weight, a punctuation of warning and lament, a reminder that the divine and the mortal are inexorably entwined. The bell's resonance seems almost to measure time itself, marking the gap between life and what comes after, each toll a footfall toward eternity. The executioner's hands are steady. The axe, darkened at the edge from years of service, arcs upward, catching the fragile morning light. The rope sways, whispering against the necks of the condemned, a voice of inevitability. Silence presses in, thick as fog, broken only by the metallic sigh of instruments, the shifting of feet, the quiet gasps of those who dare to look. In this suspended moment, the world narrows to a single point, the intersection of fear, duty, and mortality. And then release, a swing, a snap, a final breath. Life departs with the inevitability of nightfall. The crowd exhales collectively, a mixture of relief, horror, and unspoken understanding. Some avert their eyes, while others cannot look away, as if drawn to the shadow that lingers, intangible yet omnipresent. Even after the axe has fallen, its echo remains in the air, a tangible weight, pressing against chests and hearts. The condemned are removed, their absence leaving a hollow space where reality feels thinner, sharper. The marketplace, once vibrant with the smells and sounds of life, hums quietly, as if acknowledging the passage from one world to another. Merchants reset their stalls, voices tentative, aware that the ritual has passed but not truly ended. Birds circle above, settling in uneasy clusters, wings brushing against the gray sky. There is intimacy in this death, a knowledge born of repetition and necessity. It is not cruelty, not merely, but an acknowledgement that existence is fleeting, that power is measured in the ability to enforce the inevitable. And the executioner, silent as a shadow, moves back through the marketplace, a figure both feared and respected, carrying with him the weight of countless lives ended, countless moments of clarity and terror witnessed in the span of centuries. The sun shifts, breaking through the mist in a slant of pale light, illuminating the damp stones and the faint traces of blood. The town exhales, returning slowly to the rhythm of ordinary life. Children return to their games, their laughter fragile and bright against the memory of what has passed. Merchants call out their wares again, the clatter of coin and wood attempting to mask the echo of mortality. Yet the shadow remains. The presence of the executioner, of what he represents, lingers in the corners of streets, in the eyes of those who saw, in the memory of the town itself. Even when the crowd disperses, a hush hangs, subtle but insistent, reminding all who pass through the square that life is ephemeral, that each heartbeat is borrowed, that every breath carries the weight of fate. The bells toll again, distant now, a soft lament that drifts across rooftops and alleyways, blending with the wind and the whisper of leaves. In that quiet, one understands. The shadow of the executioner is never truly gone. It waits in the silence between moments, in the space between life and death, a reminder that mortality is the truest measure of all. And as the day wanes, the marketplace begins to empty. Torches are lit along walls and archways, flickering flames casting restless shadows that dance like spirits in the evening mist. The executioner disappears into the folds of the town, unseen but ever present, a spectral figure etched into memory. Behind him, the cobblestones still glisten with the aftermath of rain, and the air carries a metallic hint of inevitability, a final note of the terrible, intimate ritual that has passed. In that lingering twilight, the people feel it, the gravity, the hush, the fleetingness of all things. And as night settles over the town, the memory of fear, fascination, and the quiet intimacy of death remains, a shadow cast long and deep, ready to fold into the next story that life will demand. The forge blazes like a small sun in the corner of a blackened workshop, its light trembling over stone walls darkened by centuries of soot and sweat. Heat rises in waves, distorting the air with each inhale, curling into the nostrils like a living thing. Sparks leap from the anvils, little fireflies caught in the darkness, illuminating fleeting glimpses of arms glistening with effort, faces etched with determination and fear. The hammer strikes with a rhythm that is both music and warning, a pulse that drives the heartbeat of this world, echoing across timber beams and molten iron. Here, in this confined cathedral of flame and steel, every movement carries weight. The blacksmith's fingers hover over red-hot metal, guided by instinct as much as skill, yet haunted by memory. One slip, just one, and the fire will claim what it is owed. Skin blisters as quickly as the mind falters. The scent of molten iron burns the eyes and throat, an omnipresent reminder that creation and destruction share the same hand. Apprentices huddle near the bellows, small shoulders straining against leather straps, eyes wide, learning the law of the forge. Respect the fire, or it will respect you by taking what it chooses. The air thrums with sound, the clang of hammer against iron, the roar of the bellows, the hiss of molten metal meeting water, a chorus that speaks of effort, endurance, and the fragile line between life and death. Sweat runs down foreheads, drips onto floors already slick with soot, mingling with the iron scent in a pungent, almost sacred perfume. Each strike of the hammer leaves a mark on the metal, and upon the soul, for in these flames, men are forged as much as the swords they shape. There is no hesitation here. Hesitation is a luxury reserved for those who do not fear the cost. Outside, the night is calm, almost serene, a fragile foil to the chaos within. The wind whispers through bare branches, carrying the distant crow of roosters heralding a world yet untouched by human toil. But within these walls, the night is a furnace alive with fury. Flames lick the rafters, shadows dance across faces, and every eye reflects 100 tiny suns, each one burning with concentration and terror. The blacksmith moves with a dancer's precision, every muscle tuned to the language of steel, every breath measured against the roar of the fire. Here, mastery is inseparable from risk. Fingers charred, arms blistered, bodies trembling from exhaustion. This is the ritual of survival, the covenant between man and flame. Tools are extensions of the soul. Each hammer strike carries intention, each swing of the tongs a prayer for endurance. Apprentices watch in awe, their small hands tentative, learning to translate fear into focus, panic into purpose. One of them flinches as a rogue spark lands on a forearm, the quick hiss of skin meeting fire breaking the spell, and yet he rises again, compelled by something older than fear, the allure of shaping the world with fire and iron. The forge does not discriminate, tests nobility, patience, and courage alike. Here, in the glare of molten metal, there is no deception, no hiding from weakness. Pride is a blade as sharp as any wrought in the fire, yet it cuts both ways. A poorly timed swing, a careless glance. These are the moments that claim more than pride. The blacksmith knows this. He carries the memory of each scar, each lost apprentice, as silently as he carries the hammer in his calloused hand. Each piece of iron he bends or breaks is a testament to mastery and to mortality. Time stretches oddly here. The hours bleed into one another as if the forge itself warps the day. Sweat and soot cake the skin, the smell of burning coal and iron clinging to hair and clothes, refusing to be washed away. It is a scent of survival, of battles fought in silence. Even as the heat robs strength, it sharpens senses, hones reflexes, teaches the lessons that no book could contain. Eyes, ears, hands, all become instruments attuned to the needs of fire and metal. Each ember is a teacher, each spark a warning. When at last the flames dwindle and the coals die to a faint glow, there is a hush, almost reverent. The blacksmith steps back, shoulders heaving, limbs trembling with exhaustion. Outside, the night has claimed its stillness once more. The wind carries a chill that seeps into bones made soft by heat. He breathes deep, filling lungs with the cold air, tasting soot and iron, tasting survival. And yet, he knows tomorrow will summon him again. The fire waits, patient and indifferent, and he must return to face it, to wrest life and shape from its merciless grasp once more. In these moments of quiet, there is reflection. Every scar tells a story. Every forged blade is a memory of fear confronted, of mastery earned. Yet there is no triumph in permanence, only a temporary victory over the relentless forge. Each night ends, each ember dies, yet each day beckons with the same promise. Danger, labor, endurance, and the fleeting exhilaration of creation. He closes his eyes, feeling the ghostly warmth fade from his skin, knowing that when dawn comes, the forge will call again. And so he listens to the wind outside, letting the calmness of night fill the spaces that fire cannot touch, preparing silently for the return to the inferno. The forge has no mercy, no memory, no conscience. Yet within its brutal clarity, the blacksmith finds purpose. In the interplay of heat and steel, flame and shadow, he glimpses the truth of existence itself. Life is forged in peril, molded by effort, and fleeting in its brilliance. The night stretches on, calm and eternal beyond the walls of the workshop, and the last spark of the dying fire lingers like a heartbeat, reminding him of both mortality and resilience. And somewhere deep in the silence, a thought lingers. A promise, perhaps, or a prayer, that tomorrow he will rise again, step into the heat, and face the fire with the same trembling courage that has carried him thus far. A river winds through the valley like a serpent of silver and shadow, its surface slick and trembling under a cloak of mist. The water hides its secrets well, rocks jutting like jagged teeth, sudden eddies swirling like unseen maelstrom. To step upon it is to gamble with fate itself. The fog muffles the world, leaving only the cold hiss of currents and the occasional, distant cry of a gull. Each sound feels magnified, a warning whispered from the river itself. Fishermen move like ghosts along the banks, their forms shrouded in sodden wool and leather, clothing clinging to skin chilled to numbness. Fingers raw and cracked, they haul nets brimming with the river's grim bounty, hands slick with water, mud, and the silver slime of fish. Every movement is deliberate, measured, yet the river resists. Its icy teeth bite at exposed skin, and a misstep could mean the sudden, silent embrace of the deep. The air is heavy, saturated with the mingling odors of decay, mud, and brine. It hangs in the fog like a living thing, oppressive, choking, and yet strangely familiar to those who endure it day after day. Salt from the tide upriver bites at their lungs, mingling with the earthy stench of riverbed weeds and drowned reeds. Breath comes in shallow pulls, each exhale fogging into the gray morning, vanishing as quickly as it appeared. They step into the boats, the wood slick beneath their boots. Each plank groans with protest as oars cut into the current, pulling against the river's unseen strength. Nets, soaked and heavy, twist and writhe in their grasp. A snap of rope, a sudden shift of weight, and the fragile vessel rocks violently, threatening to tip and spill its cargo into the cold, merciless embrace below. Fear is constant, a companion as real as hunger or the ache in bones stiffened by frost. Seagulls will above, their cries sharp and hollow, like mournful bells tolling over the misty waters. Shadows seem to move in the fog, elongating and dissolving, carrying whispers that may or may not belong to men. Eyes scan the river, searching for hidden threats. A submerged rock, a sudden swirl, the ghostly shimmer of an eddy that could drag them under. Conversation is kept to a murmur, words weighed carefully, each syllable almost swallowed by the fog. Trust is fragile here between man and river, man and man. The river is a teacher of harsh lessons. Nets tear without warning, spilling their slick, silver cargo back into the current. Oars snap under the strain of unyielding water, and a collective gasp follows the splintering wood. The cold is unforgiving, seeping through layers, biting into flesh, chilling marrow. Hands grip ropes until skin is raw, yet still they press onward, compelled by the twin masters of hunger and duty. Each return to shore is a small victory, a defiance of forces that would claim them without hesitation. There is poetry in their suffering, a rhythm in the struggle. Boats scrape along the muddy banks, finally yielding to the inevitability of land. Bodies shiver with exhaustion, hearts hammering as if to echo the river's own pulse. Hands tremble as nets are secured, as water drips in rivulets from hair and sleeves. For a moment, all is still, save the sigh of the wind over the valley and the quiet splash of retreating water. Even here, the river continues to speak, softly, endlessly, reminding them that nothing is certain, nothing permanent. Yet in this relentless cycle, there is resilience. Fingers, red and swollen, dig into wet earth, and feet, numb and aching, find purchase on the slippery shore. The men glance at one another, eyes meeting in fleeting acknowledgement of shared survival, of silent camaraderie forged in frost and danger. Each return from the river is both a relief and a promise of repetition. Tomorrow will demand the same courage, the same balance between careful skill and blind chance. The river does not yield, cannot be tamed. It is alive in ways that mock human control, whispering of unseen currents beneath the placid surface, of rocks waiting like predators in the fog. It teaches them the precarious nature of existence, the thin line between sustenance and oblivion. Every haul of fish is victory and warning intertwined, a reminder that life here is earned through sweat, pain, and the acceptance of constant risk. Hands ache, muscles burn, yet there is a rhythm, almost sacred, in their labor. Nets rise and fall, glistening with the river's silver wealth, and eyes remain ever watchful. Even in the mundane repetition of work, the river casts its spell, blending fear with awe. Mist swirls around the men like spirits, curling over shoulders, brushing hair, cloaking bodies in ephemeral shadows. It is a place where mortality is ever present, where each heartbeat is counted, measured against the pull of the current and the bite of frost. As dawn seeps through the gray, timid and pale, the fishermen stand on the riverbank, water dripping from sleeves, boots, and nets. Their breaths rise in ghostly plumes, disappearing into the morning haze. Hands clasp around rope handles, shoulders hunch against the cold, and for a heartbeat, all is silent save for the whisper of water over stone and the distant, lonely cry of a gull. They are exhausted, soaked, trembling, but alive. And yet, survival here is temporary. The river will demand its tribute again. Tomorrow, it will await them, unchanged, unyielding, indifferent to their fear, their effort, their fleeting triumphs. The cycle is merciless, yet it binds them to a life defined by endurance and vigilance. Hunger, duty, and the sharp edge of mortality are the constants in their existence. Each day spent on this river is a negotiation with death itself, a delicate dance in which one misstep can mean finality. In that gray morning, as hands unclench and nets sag, there is a fragile sense of hope, not comfort, not certainty, but the quiet assertion that life persists. The river will continue to test them, as it has for generations. Yet, despite the cold, the pain, the ever-present threat of oblivion, they will return. They must, for the river is not merely a source of sustenance. It is a crucible of resilience, a mirror of human endurance, a reminder that existence, however harsh, is never without its fleeting triumphs. As they cast a last glance over the mist-laden waters, the river gleams like silver fire, concealing both peril and promise beneath its placid surface. Shadows stretch and bend, whispers of currents unseen. Tomorrow will come with its own trials, its own demands, but for now, there is this moment. The ache of muscles, the chill in bones, and the solemn acknowledgement of another day survived. And as they turn toward the village, footprints sinking into the soft, wet earth, the river remains behind, patient, eternal, waiting to challenge them once more. The scent of ink and parchment hangs heavy in the dim air of the scriptorium, thick with the mingling of beeswax from flickering candles and the faint, acrid tang of sweat. Shadows dance across cold stone walls, cast by trembling flames that struggle to illuminate the labyrinth of desks and benches. Each monk is bent low, bodies arched over manuscripts like supplicants at an altar, quills scratching in measured rhythm with their own heartbeat. It is a sacred ritual, yet one steeped in exhaustion, in the relentless grind of devotion and mortal limitation. The silence is profound, yet it is a living thing, punctuated by the subtle, urgent noises of labor. A quill scratches against vellum, its rasp echoing like whispered prayers. Fingers stiff with ink and toil tremble as they navigate the fragile surface. Every stroke a delicate negotiation between faith, skill, and human frailty. The scent of candle smoke curls upward, wrapping around the heads of the scribes like a protective veil. Yet it stings the eyes, drying them, leaving a film of grit that blurs the edges of the written word. Dust motes drift lazily, illuminated as they float in the flickering light, spirits of time caught mid-motion, brushing against robes stiffened with starch and devotion. Outside, the bell tower tolls, its sonorous voice a reminder that the world beyond these walls is indifferent and merciless. Each chime marks the passing of hours, a heartbeat against which the monks measure their own fragility. There is no haste here, yet no pause. Every hour is claimed by the act of copying, of transcribing holy words, of attempting to preserve the divine in the fragile vessel of human hands. The weight of centuries presses down invisibly, palpable in the ache of knees, in the numbness of fingers, in the tension that coils along spines bent over the desks. Every page is a battlefield. Mistakes are unforgiving. A blot of ink, a misdrawn letter, and the scribe faces repetition, punishment, or the silent derision of those who understand the sacred precision required. And yet, in the act itself, there is a strange triumph. Each line carved into the vellum is an assertion against impermanence, a claim that something might survive beyond the fragile span of flesh and bone. The ink is more than pigment. It is a tether to eternity, each stroke a whispered defiance against the inevitability of decay. The rhythm of writing is hypnotic, almost ritualistic. Quills scratch in time with a heartbeat that seems larger than any one monk, a communal pulse that binds them to each other and to the centuries before. There are brief moments when concentration falters. A cough, the sudden drop of a wax candle onto the stone floor, the sting of cold air through a cracked window, but the mind returns, drawn inexorably back to the page. Eyes blur and ache under the flickering candlelight. The fine hairs on the nape of the neck prickle with fatigue. Each monk becomes a solitary figure in a vast cathedral of stillness. Yet all are connected by the shared endeavor, by the sacred burden of transcription. Ink clogs the quill, forcing pauses that are as much prayer as necessity. Fingers smudge the written word, leaving ghostly trails of what was intended and what became. It is a dialogue with imperfection, a negotiation between human limitation and the demands of faith. There is a hush of reverence in these pauses, a soft inhalation of breath that fills the room like the quiet rustle of leaves in a hidden forest. The work is exhausting, sometimes maddening, yet it is also the purest form of devotion, where the act of creation itself becomes a prayer, a conversation with the divine through the medium of fragile parchment. In corners, older monks sit with eyes dimmed by years of labor, tracing the letters of their forebears with careful, trembling hands. Young novices mimic their motions, their own hands raw, their minds racing to internalize the geometry of letters and the cadence of sacred phrases. Every scribe knows that their labor will likely go unseen, that centuries may pass before any mortal sets eyes upon the work. And yet, they persist not for recognition, but because the act itself matters, because through the simple scratching of quills, they have become participants in something larger, something eternal. Time in the scriptorium is elastic. The sun may rise and fall unnoticed, its light a pale reminder that the world outside moves with violence and indifference. Here, the air is thick, almost suffocating, scented with old wood, ink, and the faint tang of human effort. The monks become part of this atmosphere, their presence a living testament to endurance. Each sigh, each subtle shift of body, each hesitant pause is absorbed by the walls and ceilings, a subtle acknowledgement that devotion has a price, and that price is paid in small, almost invisible increments. And yet, there is triumph, quiet and profound. When a page is completed, the scribe sets the quill down, hands trembling, eyes dimmed with strain yet swollen with something fierce and intangible. It is the triumph of survival, of persistence, of having wrested permanence from the fleeting, fragile grasp of mortality. The manuscript becomes a mirror of the soul, imperfect, laborious, yet luminous with purpose. The monk leans back, listening to the room breathe around him, the subtle symphony of quills, coughs, and the occasional shift of robes. He is exhausted, but he is also undefeated. In the silence that follows, there is a whisper of eternity. Shadows flicker on the stone, as if the walls themselves are acknowledging the labor done within. Candle flames gutter and lean toward one another, as though in quiet conversation, while outside, the wind moves across the cloister, carrying the distant tolling of the bell. The monks are both spectators and participants in this eternal moment, their labor a bridge across time. Each page completed, each line inscribed, is a defiance of forgetfulness, a fragile thread connecting past, present, and future. And as the last drop of wax falls, as the quill rests finally still, there is a moment suspended, a breath held in the heart of the scriptorium. Outside, the world continues in its chaos, but within these walls, there is a sense of completion, of fragile victory. The manuscripts, lined up on wooden desks, bear witness to human perseverance, to faith rendered visible, to the quiet heroism of hands that refuse to yield. And in that quiet, one cannot help but feel that through the simple act of writing, something eternal has been captured, something that will outlast the fleeting bodies that gave it life, something that will echo in silence long after the last monk has gone. The battlefield stretches endlessly beneath a sky swollen with gray, a leaden shroud that presses down upon the living and the dead alike. The earth, churned and torn, is slick with rain and blood, mud clinging to boots and armor like a second skin. Bodies lie scattered, limbs twisted at impossible angles, faces frozen in the last whispers of terror. Some still clutch weapons as if defiance might reach beyond the grave. Others are silent, eyes wide, mouths open in a scream that never found sound. Amid this chaos, soldiers move with grim precision. Shields clash in harsh, metallic rhythms. Swords bite through the wet air, singing a song of effort and violence, each strike echoing against the low moan of the wind. Faces are etched with exhaustion, resolve carved deep beneath streaks of blood and mud. Every breath tastes of iron and smoke. Every heartbeat is a drum marking the slow, relentless dance of survival. Armor bites into skin, leather straps soaked through with rain and sweat, rubbing raw, a constant, insistent pain that reminds the body it is alive, fragile, finite. Horses snort and struggle, hooves sliding in the muck, bodies glistening with exertion. Their riders shout, voices ragged and raw, cutting above the roar of battle, commands that struggle to find ears over the clamor. Arrows thud into shields, into flesh, each strike a punctuation of chaos, the rhythm of death that the living cannot ignore. The smell is a choking blend. Wet earth, smoke, iron, and the unmistakable tang of blood. It clings to everything, seeping into nostrils and lungs, a reminder that life and death are measured in inches, in breaths, in moments that stretch impossibly long. From somewhere distant, a single trumpet pierces the din. Its note is hollow, almost mournful, carrying across the field like a ghost's voice. It is a signal, a summons, a reminder of orders and fate. Soldiers glance up, brief flickers of awareness cutting through instinctual fury, and yet the instrument feels more like a requiem than a command. Time bends here. A heartbeat stretches into eternity. The clash of metal, the cries of the wounded, the pounding of hooves, all fold into a singular, unending moment where terror is tangible, almost solid, hanging heavy in the damp air. A knight stumbles, his knees buckling in mud, sword slipping from his grasp. He looks around and sees not comrades, but shadows of them, struggling silhouettes against the gray. Each breath burns his lungs. Each step is a triumph over instinct screaming to collapse. Around him, bodies move or lie still, caught in the grotesque choreography of war. A young soldier presses a hand to his torn side, eyes darting, mind racing. "Hold, hold," he mutters, not for any god, but as a fragile plea to himself. Above, the sky finally begins to fracture. A thin shaft of sunlight pierces the clouds, brushing the field in cold gold. It falls upon the survivors, and for a brief moment, the world seems almost still. Mud-caked and trembling, they stand, unsure if they are alive or merely suspended between life and the abyss. The silence afterward is deafening. Only the wind whispers through splintered shields and broken weapons, carrying the faint scent of rain on iron and soil. The commander, a figure of stoic endurance, surveys what remains. His eyes are haunted, reflecting the horror etched into the field, a mirror of every man and woman who walked here and will never walk again. He lifts a hand, signaling retreat, or perhaps merely acknowledgement of survival. The gesture is small, almost imperceptible, yet it holds all the weight of a world that has been burned down to this patch of sodden earth. And the survivors move, slowly, as if the mud itself resists their passage. Each step a testament to a fragile victory, to the sheer stubbornness of flesh against fate. Every face tells the story of endurance, of fear met and endured, of loyalty and courage carved not in grand acts but in inches, in heartbeats, in the quiet refusal to yield while the world falls apart around them. In the distance, the remnants of the battlefield recede beneath the sunlight, twisted banners fluttering in the breeze, torn and soaked. The dead lie silent, their blood mingling with rain, forming rivers that carry the memory of the clash away into streams and soil. For the living, the day stretches ahead uncertain and heavy. They have survived, yes, but survival carries no triumph here. Only the heavy, ghostly weight of knowing what has been lost and what will never be reclaimed. A horse whinnies, a faint sound in the vast stillness, and the survivors glance toward the horizon. Somewhere beyond the fog, beyond the churned mud and the last echo of the trumpet, another challenge waits. Another dawn will rise, another battle, another test of courage that demands everything. And still they will walk one hesitant, trembling step at a time, bound by loyalty, fear, and the stubborn hope that even in a world ruled by death, the living may carve a measure of their own destiny. The battlefield does not end. It only pauses. The wind stirs, lifting strands of hair, lifting dust and whispers of smoke. Shadows lengthen, and somewhere, in the gray between life and death, a heart pounds, steady, fragile, defiant. The alleyways awaken slowly, though not with the cheer of sunrise. Here, in the narrow arteries of a fortified city, the morning air is thick with the curling smoke of chimneys, carrying the bitter scent of roasting bread, mingling with the foul perfume of open sewers. Mist clings stubbornly to worn cobblestones, curling around the edges of barrels and crates like a ghost unwilling to leave. The city breathes quietly, though it is a restless, wary breath, as if every stone and timber carries the memory of fever and hunger. From the shadows, figures emerge, rat catchers cloaked in leather patched and darkened by years of toil. They move with the patience of predators, nets coiled at their sides, cages rattling softly with anticipation. Their eyes flick constantly, scanning for the twitch of a tail, the scratch of tiny claws on timber. Every step is measured, silent, yet charged with tension. For here, life is stitched together by the thin thread of vigilance, and every rat is a threat and a necessity all at once. The work is unglamorous, and yet indispensable. Hands, often raw and bleeding from bites and scratches, fumble through refuse and filth, yet the catchers endure. The city is a delicate balance, a place where disease rides on the smallest of thieves. Rats that steal grain and carry death unseen. Their squeals pierce the quiet, shrill and desperate, echoing off walls slick with mud and smoke. And above the noise, the distant cries of children and the bark of dogs create a symphony of life and decay, a reminder that the city does not pause for fear. Each rat trapped is a small victory, a whisper of survival against an invisible enemy. Rusted hooks and frayed ropes hang from leather belts, grim tools of both life preservation and quiet execution. The catcher's fingers are nimble and experienced, weaving through darkness, coaxing vermin into captivity. Their movements practiced as a dance that is both elegant and gruesome. Shadows wrap around them like loyal companions, thickening with every corner turned, every narrow passage crossed. The alleys themselves seem alive, watching, waiting, conspiring. The walls whisper secrets of sickness, of betrayal, of hunger unspoken, as if the stones themselves remember every outbreak, every death, every fear that has ever haunted the streets. Sometimes a rat breaks free, a flash of movement, a tail, a glint of teeth, sparks panic and pursuit. Nets swing, hooks strike, and the chase continues under the dim light of early morning. Each escape is a reminder of the fragility of human order, how swiftly chaos can return, how quickly the city can tip from survival to despair. And yet, when a capture is made, there is a fleeting triumph, a silent acknowledgement between catchers that their work has kept the disease at bay, even for a day. The city itself is a living organism of peril. Trash festers in corners, blackened by smoke and soaked with rain. The smell of decay is constant, a heavy presence that seeps into the catcher's clothes and hair, a reminder that their work touches the raw underbelly of existence. Sometimes a rat carries more than disease. Bits of stolen food, trinkets, or remnants of a life once lived. In the hands of the catchers, these fragments become symbols. A warning, a relic, a piece of the delicate mosaic of urban survival. Children, small and wary, peer from behind doors and barrels, watching the dance of life and death unfold in their streets. Some whisper prayers to saints unknown, hoping the shadowed figures will spare their homes, their pantries, their families. The catchers pass, indifferent to innocence, yet aware of the silent blessings muttered in their wake. Dogs, too, sense the tension. They sniff the air, their hackles raised, eyes following movements too subtle for most to notice. The city watches itself, layer upon layer of sentience, from the highest tower to the deepest gutter. Hours pass. The sun climbs and retreats, shifting light through the labyrinth of alleys. Sweat runs down leathered faces, mixing with grime, staining cloth and skin alike. Fingers ache, lungs burn with the scent of rot and smoke. Yet there is no hesitation. Each capture is a small act of courage, each net swung a line drawn against chaos. The catchers understand the unspoken truth. In these narrow streets, survival is both a matter of skill and defiance. One misstep could bring plague, hunger, or the silent condemnation of a city teetering on the edge of despair. By midday, the pace slows, yet vigilance never wanes. Rats retreat into the hidden crevices of the city, into corners unlit and unwelcoming. The alleys seem to sigh, the tension folding into the quiet, though the air remains thick with menace. The catchers wipe blood and grime from their hands, but the smell never leaves. It clings to the leather of their gloves, to the seams of their cloaks, to the very fabric of their being. It is the scent of duty, of survival, of unseen victories waged in shadows. And then comes dusk. The city exhales in a tentative sigh, the sun slipping behind battlements, casting the alleys in a long, trembling shadow. The last rat is trapped. The nets and cages are heavy with the day's work. The catchers retreat, moving as silently as they arrived, slipping from the labyrinthine streets into taverns, empty rooms, or the few corners of warmth they can claim. Cloaks are soaked, gloves stained, eyes reflecting the horrors faced in silence. They speak little, for words are unnecessary here. Pride and exhaustion mingle, a quiet testimony to lives lived on the knife edge between pestilence and survival. In these moments of retreat, the city transforms. Once again, it is merely stone and timber, smoke and shadow. But the memory lingers, like the ghost of a rat scuttling across a wet floor or the faint echo of claws on cobblestone. The catcher's footsteps fade into the distance, leaving behind a silence that is neither pure nor comforting, but charged with the knowledge of the unseen battles fought each day. Their labor is invisible, often unremarked, yet it shapes the life of the city as surely as walls and gates. And as the night stretches its fingers across the rooftops, the alleys hold their breath, waiting. In the dark, vermin stir once more, whispering in the language of survival, and the city waits for the dawn when the dance begins again. The catchers, unseen and uncelebrated, will rise to meet it, their work a silent defiance against decay and death. And somewhere in the quiet, between the walls and the smoke, the city remembers. Every squeal, every shadow, every victory against the tide of disease. And in that memory, life endures.